Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joseph Houston, and as the director of the Lewiston Public Library, I would like to welcome you all to the Great Falls Forum. Before I continue my written remarks, I'd like to apologize that I miscalculated on how much coffee we would need today. So if I owe you a cup of coffee, you come let me know and we'll get it squared away. The forum is a monthly speaker series featuring leaders in the areas of business, public policy, academia, and the arts, and is a partnership of Bates College, the Sun Journal, and the Lewiston Public Library. This year marks the 28th season of the Great Falls Forum. We thank you for your support and ensuring the program's continued success. Today's program is also live streaming via Zoom, and a recording will be available on the library's YouTube page. Please visit lplonline.org for more information. Please mark your calendars for our next Great Falls Forum on April 16th. At the conclusion of today's program, there will be an opportunity for audience questions. Those in the room are welcome to raise their hands, and those joining us virtually can enter their questions using the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we'll read these to our speakers. And now I have the pleasure of introducing today's featured speakers, Yun Garrison and Fowsia Musse. Dr. Yun Garrison is assistant professor of psychology at Bates College, where she teaches courses in counseling psychology, liberation psychology, and community engaged psychology. The recipient of a 2025 American Psychological Foundation Award, Garrison's current research bridges psychological science and community resilience in the aftermath of community trauma. Dr. Garrison has collaborated for the past 5 years with Somali community leader Fowsia Musse, who is executive director and founder of Maine Community Integration in Lewiston. Born in Somalia, Fowsia arrived in the U.S. in 1995. She has over 17 years of experience as a cultural broker, medical interpreter, and community health advocate. Recognized with the Women of Achievement Award, or the 2017 Trailblazer Award from Empower Immigrant Women, YWCA's Women of Achievement Award, and 2024 Courage is Contagious Award. Her leadership at MCI empowers individuals from diverse backgrounds with vital resources and support. Please join me in welcoming Yun and Fowsia to Lewiston.
Thank you so much for being here today. Fowsia and I are very excited and grateful for this opportunity to share our knowledge about healing and growth in the aftermath traumatic events. So today's this meeting we'll be sharing some stories about how this theory and knowledge became available in this written and artistic and oral story format. And we'll also have some time to answer your questions. So again, my name is Yun Garrison, and I have been very honored to have had opportunities to work with Fowsia over the past 5 years and a half. I came to Lewiston, Maine in 2020, and everybody remembered what happened in 2020. Yeah. The global isolation, the global crisis about what the future is going to look like without knowing whether we can even sit in this, room all together. So I arrived here in 2020, and thanks to Fowsia's, just warm hospitality, she really, really welcomed me into the Lewiston community, where I got to learn more about the resiliency, the hard workers in our community, creative people in our community, brave and courageous people in our community. And through working with her, I'm learning so much about Lewiston community. So the story that we will be sharing today is related to trauma in particular. So Fowsia will share her story of the 5 R's. It's a theory of healing and growth after traumatic event. and she will share a story about 5 R's first.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for coming. First, I want to say, what do you think of my outfit? I thrifted all, okay? And if you can see it, it's blue, white, and red. It's gratitude to the flag that gave me so much of who I am today and who I want to become. Thank you. My name is Fowsia Musse. I was born Somalia, but grew up Ethiopia until I was 13 years old. I'm a mother of 5 today. I have 3 Mainers. They were not born in Rooster County though, born in Lewiston. And so 4 girls and a son, and one of my daughters right there, 25, but I'm still 19. And my team is here too. And thank you everybody for coming. So at the wall right there, the corner, there is art done by Dr. Yun Garrison's good friend, Wang Young Lee, who's an artist, a South Korean American artist. She did amazing work. It's the actual art is actually texturized. And so if you touch it, it was blended with fabric, and a lot of the fabric came from Yun's grandmother. The first R, it's a young figure, female figure, supposed to be me, running from a war, Somalia. I do remember running um, after my mother, who flee separately from us, at least for a few hours, and then lost my mother for at least a year long. We thought she did not make it, but I was reunited later. So that came from that. You know, children who are uprooted from a war, who don't only lose their home, but also their identity. The second is resettlement. Very often, when refugees are displaced, resettlement could be also a long, long duration, a refugee camp. And sometimes, they short term, they can just come to a surrogate community like United States if you're lucky. The third R, the story is very long. It's called residual stagnation, and it's a non-linear trauma healing process that I initially call regression, progression, and regression. Like as you take one step forward for healing, sometimes you take 4 steps back, and this this portion of that it's as normal to. That's how usually trauma it goes for people. The residual part came from my own Somali background. When I was young, after we flee from northern Somalia, we went to Ethiopia. It's 2 hours away from northern Somalia, called Somaliland today. And we live what I call nomadic, like I call it dinosaur time. I used to call it primitive, so I was told not to say that again. So I'm using a dinosaur time, and it was really, really the caveman's time. Like we drank from reservoir, we have camel, and we drink once in a while camel meal, once a week or maybe once in a day meal if you're lucky. Sometimes like a white rice, and we drank from rain from reservoir. And when the rain in the reservoir is receding, I remember in Somali it's called acho. Acho, it's have a poetic thing, and it's money Somali culture. There's a lot of songs about that. But when the water is receding, I remember seeing a mosquito larva. The water is dark and the murky. And my mother taught me how to boil that water first and then maybe cook the rice or tea. And so one day when I thought about the first R, I remember the water when you have to wait for the things to settle at the bottom. So that came from residue. And then I said, oh, residue, stagnation. That's how I feel. And this came from many, many years of when I came to the United States. I came with a lot of invisible wounds. It's not visible to other people, but I came with compounded trauma, our first childhood background. Uh, I had the worst form of FGM, female genitalia cutting, when I was very young. And so I came with a lot of suppressed trauma. I was not aware I was suppressing anything till I came to the United States. And then for the first time, I was treated as a child and not survivor, and not my mother's helper, and not the oldest child, and not helping every time my mom flee or miscarry. And so everything I suppress, once I have a lot of leisure time, just boom, came to the surface. And at that period of my life, I call it the fragmented self. I couldn't bring myself together. I felt like it was so many pieces of me that just I could not bring. It was so painful. I became a cutter, attempted suicide many times, was in and out of mental health institutions, one 6 months, one a year, one um, the longest one was right after the Boulder High School Colorado shooting. When I was asked, with no, I didn't speak a lot of English. When I was asked how I would respond if I was bullied, I used verbatim Somali word means kill, could be a shove or bush. But because I didn't have the language, I keep, scribbling. I'm gonna kill somebody, and I got me into a problem. So they took me to, a place to, I think it was halfway home for kids with behavior issue. I was not aggressive, but it was just I was somebody who was in imminent danger to myself. And so there I was there. And long story short, in that right around that time, I had an arranged marriage and had my daughter and left high school, last year of high school, had another daughter, and then moved to Maine. And so after long years of therapy, and I moved to Maine, um, I met a man named David Harris. It was a grant funded from Tri-County then, and he called me and want to hire me as a cultural broker for a group of women and men from the Somali community. And this particular funding was about people who survived torture. And I was not a survivor of torture, but I convinced him that I should not work as an interpreter, but I should just be a patient. And because I like what he has to say. And for many years, I was in a couch therapy. And the couch therapy kind of helped temporarily. But each time I go, I dig even deeper to things I suppress. So I come out even worse all the time. So anyway, I ended up being a patient. And I am forever grateful because I talk about him all the time. Whatever he is, I'm really grateful. Um, the first day I met, he was like, he in a little room, he had a billows stack, a notebook, a little tea setting. And he said, I'm not going to ask you or what you suffer or where you come from. We're going to sit there and you're going to tell me a short brief of who you are and 5 things you want to work in short term and 5 long terms. And I was like, oh, he's so cold. Like, you don't want to ask me anything. But I sat on a corner and he gave me a notebook and I started writing and I'll come back all the time, every Tuesday religiously. And I'll tell him, I have this sudden onset feeling of just feeling blah. I used to call it the blah. He said it was called the gray feeling. And he said, okay, since this will be part of your 5 short-term solutions to figure out what is going on. He said, sit on that window. We don't talk much. Take a notebook. And he said, we're going to trace back your footsteps today, tomorrow, yesterday, until we find the sources. Because you don't just suddenly feel this, there's a trigger somewhere, but you're unable to identify. So the first time I was like, this is not gonna work, it was not gonna come in. The next day, the after day, finally I get used to the quietness. He will turn on a little music. And I was like, that's it. I figured out something. And for me, it was the sound of Somali women. Even though a lot of my physical abuse were actually done by men, especially my father, who was very, um, that's how he grew up. And so you use a lot of physical corporal punishment of children to raise them from the Islamic school to a traditional school everywhere. Um, it was the women, not the men. And later on, I was able to identify that somewhere in my life, I saw the women as complicit. My mother who done waited for my dad not to be home so we can undergo the FGM, the culture aspect, the clothing, all of it. The women became the gatekeepers and the enforcers. And so I saw the women as a lot of times bystanders by choice and to enforce the bad element of what I consider within my culture. And so when I came to Maine, I didn't have the ability to identify. And only when I came to Maine, I would start work with the Somali community. And we didn't have a support system in place. So you work with women with domestic violence and sexual assault and children who the system will, interfere, CBS and stuff like that. So in many ways, I see myself in a lot of the work with no support. So they became a source of triggering for me instead of help. And so with David, I was able to identify that, oh, this is an issue and it took so long. And as of today, there are still a lot of triggers for me, especially with women who speak Somali, their voices. And there are elements of that that I am still unable to understand where it came from because I don't have a memory of it. My body feels it, something, but I don't have a recollection of what exactly that is. And so that third stage of the residual stagnation took really, really, really long time. A lot of self-discovery, a lot of crying, a lot of process, but all of it came from also the willingness to know about myself and working with other women and other immigrants. It just um, continue, I guess. And then the fourth stage is called reconciliation. It's myself, younger self, the women figure wearing the red. Ewan's grandma material is my older self. So the younger self meets the older self to kind of like the whole process is a process towards autonomy, personal autonomy. And, and then the last one is myself today. So I met Dr. Yun in 2020 during COVID. After my 10 days of eating sambusa when the world was shut down, I said, I have this crazy idea. And everybody who knows me, I always say crazy ideas. So I said, I have this 5R thing in my head and I really want to write something, but can you please help me make this come to life? And we started writing down the pieces. And then before it became anything, I went back to Ethiopia for the first time since 1995 because my mother, she rest in peace, was diagnosed with sarcoma cancer. And so I went there, and part of that process also in my head was to face my father. And so I arrived in the capital city um, where my mother was receiving chemotherapy. And after 3 days with her, she was on her way to Turkey to get better treatment. And I said, Mom, I need to go back to the small town where dad and the rest of the siblings are because I want to say hi to him too. But I really, in my head, I want to just muster the courage to maybe say, even though I was very scared of him, to to say, Dad, this was wrong, and it took me this many years, and so I considered that a reconciliation and healing. But God had a different plan for me, so I got to never pass the airport in that city. That's where I was shot, and I got to meet him 5 minutes at the hospital. And he was on a wheelchair himself. He was 80-year-old with a lot of health issues. And so we just held hands to each other very, in silence, and that was it. He passed away 2024 June, and I returned to that exact airport in August of 2024. I just wanted to, this time, not to be hindered again, and I was determined not to relapse and go back to this fall of like, okay, I never faced my demons, and now, I'm fragmented physically. So I went there, and it was really, really like hard. I was very scared. I was not sure if I would face the same destiny again, but I went, and I got to see their graves, my sister and my parent, and um, got to say goodbye. And sorry. So I did come back, and I think for me, um, I was shot on October 25, 2022. So the hardest part of my first year anniversary was Lewiston also. On the same day, 18 people losing their life. So that I felt like took the sense of safety of returning to home when I came back. And so I don't know, I responded when I heard that night, we have to lock down and stay in shelter. My body, instead of crying, it responded with migraine headache. And so ever since then, I've been struggling with these really extremely bad migraine headaches. And my doctor thinks because of the nerve system is responding to that. And so then we have to go through grief all over again, and seeing people. And It was really a hard process for me because I felt like I already had a trauma, and then my community very closely is going through the same trauma on the same exact day. I feel like I hate that day these days. When I hit October 25th, something about it just, really bothers me a lot. But I'll stop here. So, yeah.
Thank you, Fowsia, for sharing this difficult memory. And, I appreciate your courage, opening up and sharing um, your resiliency and your hope and your journey. Yeah. So, as a psychologist, as a community partner of Maine Community Integration, Fowsia, my role has been witnessing and listening and documenting and sharing um, this important story. This is a Fowsia story, but this is not just her story. And both of us really wanted to share this as more healing narratives. So in post-traumatic growth theory, there are two types of influence that affect you when you are going through grief or processing your trauma. The first influence is proximal influence. People who are in your immediate social circle, your loved ones, your family members, your teachers, your friends and neighbors. Um, these people, they keep sending message about how you should deal with trauma. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes people say you should get over it. Sometimes that is very, very hard to hear. I do hear that a lot. I work with a lot of clients, their friends, their family. They're getting tired of hearing their trauma story, and they begin sharing, "Oh, I think you have had enough. I think you can just look at the brighter side and move on." When the person is still needing time and community of healing. Yeah. Another influence is more distal, a little far influence, usually through some social, media, public media, mass media, or our, societal beliefs, such as everything happens for a reason. When traumatic things happen, people rely on that belief to understand why this happened to me, why that happened at that day, at that time, and why me. And people try to understand. So Fosia's story impacts both. It creates a different healing narratives in our Lewiston community, our neighbors, our school, um, friendship and families, but also through sharing this through scholarly um, um, paper, we are also trying to create a bigger framework. Healing is not linear. The fact that you work really hard to overcome your traumatic event, that doesn't mean that there's no darkness. That doesn't mean that there's no grief. That doesn't mean that there are no negative emotions. There are still negative emotions like the third phase, residual stagnation. You are healing and you are feeling a lot of painful emotions. You are confronting it. So in that phase, what does a person need? We just need a healing community who can sit with the person, listen to the person, instead of telling how they need to fix that traumatic event. Healing and fixing is different. Our body inherently has inherent ability to heal. When your bone is broken, your bone has inherent ability to reconnect and heal. You go to doctor still, right? But doctor doesn't heal the bone. Doctor offers the right environment and support so that the bone, the fracture can be healed, right? Psychologically too, we are not trying to fix what happened, the damage. We are offering conditions through which a person can heal. So this narrative, Fosia stories, plays that role in terms of sharing our healing narratives. Yeah. Another important component about our collaboration is, as you can tell, I'm not from here. As you can tell, my English is not my first language. And I have so much empathy about people who have to express something through language that is not very comfortable for them. Yeah. Right now I speak fluently. I'm comfortable expressing my thoughts and feeling in English. Earlier on, when people ask me, Yun, how are you? What do you feel? All I could say is, I'm fine. Thank you. move on, because that was my vocabulary. Yeah. And Fowsia has been working with a lot of refugees and immigrant families. Not all of them feel very comfortable talking about feeling, talking about what happened to them in English. Yeah. So we try to have this knowledge through visual art, because visual art, you don't really need to have English vocabulary for you to understand what the image is trying to tell you. I think another component is when I work with people who have experienced difficult and traumatic events, when I ask them to talk about that in their native language, trauma is already hard to talk, even though you speak your native language. Yeah. So art creates a little bit safe way of accessing that difficult emotion without verbalizing a lot of traumatic memories. So that's why we tried this art can be more accessible way of sharing our knowledge. And we did some gallery show in Lewiston downtown, and we had some refugee families coming and responding to this art without reading all the English text. They were still able to understand, I see myself there. Yeah, one of the refugee friends who came to the gallery show shared, each image, I see myself there. And thank you, Fowsia, for sharing this beautiful knowledge. So I wanted to highlight why art when it comes to trauma. Yeah.
Um, I think when we did the art gallery first at Bate College, thank you to Bate College, a lot of our work, by the way, my organization, from the inception to today, a lot of it is because of the help of Bate College, their professors, their students, all of our work. So thank you. Um, when we did the first art exhibit, and then later on the mayor, thank you, mayor, let us use his studio here for 6 months, everybody across the board, from base student to anybody from the public. They don't have to be immigrant. They don't have to come from war. Everybody finds something to relate. But what actually caught me off guard was how everybody could relate to a third stage. And everybody said, "Oh, I never actually thought about that part, or this is how I feel." And initially when we were putting together, I thought it was going to be crazy. Who's going to believe that? But I was actually shocked at how many people responded to the third stage and say, this is how I feel. Because many times when I used to go therapy, or even in my culture, there's this strong insinuation that once you go through trauma and you have enough time, that time heals wounds. It is true, time does heal wounds, because some things will fade eventually, right? But what they don't tell you is, while this time is healing, that there is a period where you constantly are regressing and progressing, and that is the part that is missing very often. And so I really appreciate this part of it. When you did a lot of the work, I just came up with a crazy idea, but I didn't like that, and that's one that stood to people the most. I got asked a lot about the final resolution. What does that look like? And I said, I don't know. I I look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, and I noticed that especially in the United States, collectively, there's this obsession of self-actualization, and there is this rush for, especially if you're an immigrant, to get to that period as soon as you came to the United States. So there's this idea that you should stimulate, you should learn the language, you should just navigate. And I feel like for many immigrants, what you cannot see that actually hinders people's progress is the trauma. People are here. A lot of us are here physically, but not mentally. So for a long time, I used to say, "Oh, we're just coexisting with everybody else." And enough time, you can tell you when you sit with people, even though specifically in Somali culture, we don't acknowledge mental health, and even more so for children and women, very specifically. Despite of the denial, if you sit enough time with somebody, they start talking about trauma in their own way. Now that you mention it, when I lost, and they tell you horrific story. And so what I learned is a lot of people here you never know who's walking amongst you. I used to have this fascination with military, especially when they're wearing the uniform, and very specifically their boots. And I look at them, I think about where these foods have been and what kind of story they can tell. And I always wonder if they have a same seasonal depression. If the summer triggers those who went Middle East in a war, in a warm, like myself who came from Somalia, I have a reverse seasonal depression. I hate the sun in the summer. I think about if the July 4th, firework, triggers that because it triggers for many of us. And Layla, who's sitting there the other day, we talk about that, how the new arrivals from Afghanistan, that too reminds you all the bullets and the missiles. And so I learned many ex-military that I met, a lot of them from Vietnam, actually older people, they say that they have the same triggers. Even their dogs, a guy told me, hates July 4th firecrackers, and gives medication to his dog. So this, even though it started with me, it actually became a universal language. Trauma impacts all of us the same way as death and sickness. So after all, we're not so different. And so I think about all the time, we have so much in common when it comes to collective impact issues. And so why can't we all work together? And so I like that this is bringing all of us together, because when it was in my head, I thought it was just going to be a Somali Fowsia only story. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, this is not, limited to Fosia's individual story. It also connects to maybe some of you, who feel validated by hearing these stories. Yeah. Um, I also want to comment on several things. So, post-traumatic growth theory in psychology, it was not a thing until 1990s. Yeah. Before that, the focus was on damage. When trauma happens, traumatic event happens, what's the damage? What is the psychological damage? That was a focus until two scholars developed a theory of post-traumatic growth, and they mostly focus on people who are going through some serious terminal illness, unexpected death, and accident, things like that. And they identified five key positive change that happened after a traumatic event. The first one is spirituality and existential well-being. People are able to feel a sense of connection to something larger than themselves, spirituality, but also existential well-being. Instead of like doing or performing, serving, there is a deep sense of well-being about just being existing and alive in this world. The second change is improved personal strength. They went through very hard things, almost life-threatening things, and now they feel stronger after enduring this really, really traumatic event. The first one is being able to see new opportunities and new path forward for their individual life path or for their community. Yeah. The fourth one is greater sense of appreciation of life. Life offers so much to you, which were not, which the person was not able to see and accept before a traumatic event. The fifth one, it's my favorite, improved relationships. Yeah. So after going through a traumatic event, people have better relationships with people around. And this happens through two things. People become warmer toward other people. After going through that hard traumatic event, people become more warmer toward other people, and people connect deeper. So warmth and depth in a personal life. And think about this. You went through a very hard experience. Sometimes you may go very inward and cut off the relationship. I have no love left. I am struggling. But the positive change is that warmth. And I like that part so much because warmth is a medicine in healing journey. In a personal warmth, self-compassion toward yourself. When you are not doing well, instead of yelling at yourself, you be gentle with yourself. So these five things are so well integrated in Fasia's story already. she came, stronger, the resolution. She is more determined about what's important in her life. Fowsia knows how to use her energy and time sharing food. She's incredibly generous person. So she, the resolution part has all of this component. And Fowsia's theory is also different from the existing post-traumatic growth theory because Fowsia really acknowledged the third stage. All the positive changes are happening and you can still struggle and there's nothing wrong with you because that's part of healing and growth.
Thank you, Yun. And I just want to add that the final stage of the post-traumatic growth, um, I told Yun many times that I feel, I don't know if other people who had a similar experience ever felt this, but I feel this sense of here, but somewhere else at the same time. And so as you get warmer and build a more authentic relationship, because suddenly you have this, I woke up with this realization of about time. I feel as though I'm kind of obsessed time. Time is very different to me right now. I wake up every day and even though I don't verbalize it, I feel as though that I need to do everything I can right now. So I'm very conscious of time now, time, time, time. But another thing I notice about me is cutting through the BS. I don't have any time for noise anymore. Reactive work, the noise, the stuff I used to do before. I just came to, I don't know how, but I just came to this realization of calmness, but very observant and very selective. I'm like, I need to do this and do that, but in a very different way before. And time is one thing that changed for me. And this sense of feeling, this strong feeling of like, I'm here, but not fully here. I don't know if it's part of me is still up there somewhere in heaven, but I just feel something, and a lot of gratitude, like when you face death and I was told I wasn't going to survive because I contracted a bacteria. So the first 2 months I was told I was not gonna make it. But I wasn't panicking. It was a lot of, even though I was on a lot of medication, it was a lot of reflection. A lot of the reflection came, oh man, I thought I did a lot, but I actually did nothing. Yeah. And if I have time, I'll change this. And if I have time. And so when Yoon used to visit me almost every week in the hospital, I one day asked, can you please bring a recorder with you? And that's when we record the 5 hours. And I think at that time I was trying to leave something because the doctor said that I wasn't going to make it. But now to come out of it, you feel many people who survive something, this sense of guilt. And for me, I don't feel like I feel guilt. I feel obligation that I need to do better. I need to be a better person. And in many ways, I want to do a lot of work. That's all of us, and seeing all the struggle in humanity and all of us in the community. And that gratitude part, you suddenly start seeing the good in everything. And you're like, I don't know why we're fighting all the time and all this, you know, issue here because we have so much greatness here in this country. And I want to share a little weird personal story. When I came back, when the air ambulanced me from Ethiopia to here, I was very lucky. Mainers, everybody here fundraised for me and got me from there. That itself is just a miracle. I look back every day, I'm like, how is so unreal to me. And I wasn't aware that I was on so much medication because they give me so much narcotic. But I keep repeating the entire trip from here. I need the flag. I need the flag. Sorry. So when I came to Maine Medical, Abdi, who's there, he said the nurse walked in with the flag. And they look at it, they're like, what's wrong with you? She needs, medication because I need to go through surgery right after I arrive, more amputation. because of the bacteria, and I was going to almost go through the septic, shock. And the nurse, Abdi told me later when I recovered, the nurse said, well, she requested it. So because of that, all my friends at work and everybody who know me start bringing flags to me. So I have a collection. So I have this renewed relationship with the flag today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your vulnerability, but also your deeper relationship with, this country and what you are able to receive and offer in this, community. Yeah. I can also share a little bit about some emotional components about this work. This, as you can tell, this work has been deeply emotional. As she was doing this, when she was visiting Ethiopia to face her father, not only she lost her leg, but she also lost her sister there. And as a friend, as a community partner, we all were worried that she may not be able to make it because of the very serious infection. So I have a very vivid memory about, having the recorder and listening to her story. There was a lot of tear from both of us. At that time, I also had a moment because something felt familiar to me because I lost my own brother now a decade ago. But he was a person with Down syndrome, and he was just very angelic, a person of joy, but also deep thinker and reflector. And he kept his diary, 13 years of diary, and his last word for me was keep the diary and ... keep the diary and ... So that memory came to me when I was holding the recorder, not knowing whether Fowsia would make it or not. So I had a very strong sense of responsibility. This is not just academic work for me. There's something personal, deeply alive, calling me into this work. So I, treated her words with the highest respect and love. And I really, really wanted to do just this. Thankfully, she made it pull through, and she is still here, stronger and sharing her, these wonderful ideas and theories. So that my own grief, recognizing that I'm also in this journey in some way, that was really important moment for me. The day when we made a decision to visualize this art, I went back. At that day, we met, we talked about it, and I look at the calendar, and that was my brother's death anniversary. Like, wow, brother, you are still influencing me. Thank you. We are doing good work. Yeah, so her loss and my loss, throughout the process, we did a lot of storytelling, some tears, some laughter, food. So our humanity was fully alive in our knowledge co-creation, which is not very common in psychological research nowadays. So that's the part that we really try to explain why embracing humanity is important in creating and sharing knowledge. Yeah. I think we can open up the floor for questions, but Fowsia, if you have any thoughts or reactions, you're welcome to share. Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
So I do have a microphone that will need to circulate so the folks joining us from home can hear you if you have a question. So if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll try to make my way around to you. I already apologize for the lack of coffee. I should also apologize that I did not bring tissues for everyone.
Thank you both so much. I wonder, I often think of children who've had a lot of trauma, and that it seems more difficult for them to have any kind of reconciliation or trust enough to be able to heal, like Fowsia has talked about.
When I came to Maine from Atlanta, and I started working with the immigrant community first time, um, I remember thinking, "Oh my God, how is it possible?" Like only I used to think, only if these schools knew who I am. Because you came into schools and you're expected to thrive like other children, assuming that the other children have a stable, at least homes. You came with so much issue, and here you are, the first you arrive, you're treated like everyone else. And because of that, I actually used to speak very firmly about, building proactive collective systems, because many times we were unable to see when we come here what will that look like in the future when these kids grow up and not everybody have the support to heal. And trauma is vicarious. You don't have to leave Somalia or Ethiopia. A lot of times our immigrant community, the older people, are trauma bonding. And we're very, very much strong, have a strong connection to our country of origin. And media today brings all your problems to your iPhone. You can see everything. And so I am still advocating for children to be seen even within the educational systems, especially those kids who do not show outward aggression are missed in the system. A lot of kids are quiet. Their parent, especially in the immigrant parent household, parent themselves are, suppressing their trauma. It's too painful, right? I remember Yun and I, right after the Lewiston mass shooting, I brought 6 Somali mothers together. 2 lost their children different times, but in drowning here in Lewiston. And 4 of the women, their sons kill each other before the mass shooting. So I have this crazy idea. I was like, oh, we need to talk about the healing, but the 5 stages of grief mixed with modern psychology and take on Islam. And so I also get Islam, women who's an African American but a Muslim background. Yun was kind enough to participate. We both as an observant and as also to give feedback. The first 2 sessions, the women cry. And when I talk about crying, like cry that you never cry in your life. The third section was anger, pure anger. They were angry at me first for bringing all these suppressed, memories that they didn't want to walk, for now they didn't work through. And the second they all requested was justice from the system, because they felt like, the system mislead them because they don't know how to raise their kids here without the system, potentially accusing them of child abuse. That was their language. And we actually stopped the sessions. And it got me thinking, with the help of Yun, oh my God, I was not aware that everybody can go through this process. I know what happened to me, but I'm acknowledging to move forward. And I'm also allowing a regression, but at the same time, I'm allowing progression. But I made the mistake of thinking that everybody will feel the same because they are all offered the same opportunity as me. And because of that, we stop, and then we start doing the RPs and the focus groups and all that stuff. And now what came from that, a lot of the mothers is hands-on work, not so much of talking, but a lot of work. And Yoon said the other day so beautifully that I said, I'm going to learn, copy this word from you. What do you call creative distraction? Creative distraction. So we're just currently doing a lot of creative distraction from the actual deep down work. I hope I answered that question.
Any other questions? Yep.
Sometimes victims of trauma will blame themselves. Did you have to go through that?
Yes. Actually, the first time when I came to the United States, as a child. I left all my mother and my father were all back home. I was the only person who had the opportunity to come here. And so it took so long to recover from that. Every time I eat, I remember so vividly. If I am eating chocolate or something, I'll actually stop myself. So I was actually many times was hospitalized for being underweight. I think about my sibling, oh, they don't have that, so I feel this guilt of having better life, guilt of coming here, guilt of leaving them behind, because I felt like I was the oldest one and I was the protector. This time around, when I went back and I watched my little sister kill in front of me, it was the same thing too. But it was like, why did I go? But this part is when, for the first time, I like you said, I reconnected to spirituality. And in Islam, we believe that our faith are predetermined by God. And so whatever happened to you was meant to be. But what's important is that you don't get stuck, and you use a lot of gratitude. So the hardest part of my religion is the fact that you could right now be shot and at the same time say Alhamdulillah by the grace of God. It's the hardest thing to do. You're like, what am I grateful for? you know? But I have to learn and force myself. And amazingly enough, this time around, I was able to see that. And just I don't know if it's just like more disassociation of what I struggle, but I had this feeling. I don't know if it's new to me or everyone else goes through that, but something about that day just take away a lot of my fear. I don't know if it was a sense of realization that life is too short, but I have this feeling every day that I wake up, I want to leave today, I want to work today, I want to do things today. And my brain is not allowing me to dwell too much of this time around the second time trauma. My therapist that I only met twice said, first she said she can help me because I seem to know a lot about myself. And two, she said I'm suffering something called flood affect. And I think I'm still disassociated from what happened that day, but I would like to think that I'm doing better. And I have a new take on life. And before, when I was younger, I felt like I dwelled too much on my childhood and anger, right? And why this and why that. And it took so much of my time. I feel like now I have a sense of renewed gratitude. Now I'm like, I don't have a lot of time for that. And amazingly enough, a lot of those memories that I used to be so strong when I was younger faded, and I don't know how. I actually have a hard time recalling a lot of them right now. Yeah, and so I don't know what happened, but I tell my kids that when the bullet hit me, it took something, and that something was like fear. The fear was just gone, and it was almost as if it was waiting for me this whole time because I felt my entire life, if I go back, something was gonna happen. And I don't know if I manifested that or something, but when I did went back and that actually happened, it was just like, oh my God, I just don't have a time anymore. I just need to leave today. So I felt guilty the first time for a long, long time. But now, not so much.
Thank you both so much for this amazing work and for being here today and sharing some of the intellectual ideas and the experiences and emotions that are pulsing through it. I wonder, Fowsia, if you could talk a little bit about the other kinds of work that you're doing these days that you've come through this knowing that residual stagnation can still be present. But I feel like your creative power is still like surging forward. And I know just this morning were you at Bates this morning talking to Bates students in a religious studies class, and you're working on so many different fronts. I wonder if you could share some of that.
I want to say because of this work, with the help of Professor Yun and her student, they were able to do amazing focus groups, and women came together and the public came together. And because of Yun and her background, she was able to capture all that in a documentation way. And what came out of was right after the mass shooting, what came was we're going to need to do soundscape. So we did a lot of candle making, and then we did a soundscape drumming, because everything we do is have a psychology to it. We don't just say swimming, we say hydrotherapy. And so because of all that work, and instead of coming back and saying, oh, we need more, circling support group, the mothers in the group became a co-creating, a co-ownership process. And they said, oh, we learned because of this work that all the women are coming from this strong asset-based skill set. And so because of that, we're now promoting, we expanded our space to second floor, and we are promoting a space called the Makers. The Makers, we got a lot of donation recently from so many Mainers who came together. We got about 35 sewing machines and still come in, boxes and boxes of fabric and mannequins, you name it, or overwhelmed, and in a good way. And the maker space is going to do, because of Yun's work, we just finished 11 sessions with the use of pottery and clay art. The mothers, we just finished, or tomorrow we're doing the, what do they call? Glazing. Myself, I just learned that too. And so Layla, who's behind there, is leading the maker space. And the whole idea is like, look at that, huh? Full circle. Meals, the history of Maine and the immigrant story of textile. And I feel like, or I don't want to toot our own horn too early, but I feel like we're reviving that, bringing that back. So from emotions of bonding over the Lewiston shooting, and having that indirect trauma and grieving with the community, came out of, we need to make something. And initially, led by Ashley Medina, our youth program coordinator, we did something called Seeds of Friendship. And then Seeds of Friendship became Seeds of Compassion right after shooting, where our youth create indoor air balloons to distribute to senior centers and the unhoused community, to just create more of a bond and extend that. And so much of this work is gave birth because of the work with you and I are doing with Bate College. And so amazingly, a lot of it just is, people are not even aware they're sharing their emotions of they creating something. And each time something comes out of it, I'm like, oh my God, so beautiful. And so right now the maker is the byproduct of this work. And please join us. Layla's gonna tell us what we're gonna start. She's our amazing skillful. She can draw, she can create, there is nothing she cannot make. I just do the talking and she makes something. So please give thank you to, yeah, yeah.
I want to add more because you're doing more, that plus a lot. So we're also, Fowsia is also teaching, affirming a lot of refugee mothers sewing skills. They already have the amazing sewing skills. So, creating some, aprons or tablecloths and things like that. So there are so many creativity-based healing by doing, not healing by talking. Yeah. So by touching things, you can access, your memories and feelings. By doing this with others, you can verbalize some emotions. Yeah. Do you remember that? Like, this makes me feel happy. So moms have been sharing that too. And please know that these moms also went through pretty difficult war trauma, displacement trauma, not being able to see their families. So they're actively coping and living with grief and trauma, and they are still choosing this connection, contribution to community and their neighbors. Yeah. So Layla is very talented person. She also did a lot of translation. These Fowsia's 5 Rs have been translated into more than 11 languages, including Pashto and Dari, 2 common languages spoken by Afghanistan people. And Layla did a beautiful job translating in written and oral format too. Yeah.
I want to say, when we talk about healing, we often forget the people who contribute to our own healing. my healing will not be possible without my kids, without my staff, without the community, without my friends. It's so much of the healing and growth we do as everybody. If you don't have all the element to grow, my mother used to say, my she rest in peace, if you plant a flower in a desert, two things will happen. You eventually get tired and wilt, right? But whichever way it goes, if you don't have the community support, there's no way that flower can flourish by itself. And I think about the forest all the time, right? In order to be a forest, it's millions of trees, right? Supporting each other. So I would not be here. One to God, one to this country, and one to everybody in this room and outside of this room. So I want to thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
All right. And with that, I think that's a good place to stop. Thank you so much to Fowsia and Yun for sharing your stories. I think we all certainly felt the power of the framework that you're exploring here. So I hope to see that continue.